Welcome to the review video for exam 2. There's going to be 7 questions based on chapter 4. And here is big, or not big picture, here's very precisely what you need to be worried about. The first is really, I shouldn't say the first, everything is going to center around the idea of these 4 generic strategies and how they are interrelated and understanding them. So what you really want to understand is what kind of product does a cost leader produce, and that is an on-par product, and that it uses its value chain to take out costs such that it's able to produce this on-par product cheaper than everybody else can, which gives them 2 options. They can either lower their price, still have an adequate profit margin, and build volume and try to force the other companies that don't have a profit margin that price out of business, or they can leave their price where everybody else is and just enjoy a larger profit margin, which that in and of itself should generate an above average return. In the cost leadership, you want to think about the trade-offs that are involved in the value chain and the sorts of things that are supposed to really make a difference. So as you look at the value chain, you have to ask yourself, what is a company likely to be able to do better than somebody else that would result in a cost advantage, or being able to produce the product cheaper than someone else can? In all cases, what you're going to see is this idea of how pressure from suppliers and buyers are going to exert forces on these policies or these different strategies. Remember, in differentiation, usually what you see is that you can charge a much higher price for something, and more so than your cost, because people value what you want or value what you have, whether it's because they perceive your product as superior, your service is superior, or they just get prestige from dealing with your product. Same sorts of things as for the cost leadership strategy. What elements of the value chain are likely to make a big difference in my ability to deliver this differentiated product and do so at a price point that's going to be successful for me? And likewise, how is the power of suppliers and buyers likely to affect me? And the focus strategy, um, I don't know that I have a specific question about the focus strategy, but you want to be familiar with it. And then the integrated cost leadership differentiation strategy. And so this is where we do some of both. And the advantages is it becomes a very strong strategy because you have a lot of protection on what your competitors can do or what your customers can do. But it's usually the hardest to execute because it precisely is that balancing act of you're trying to put in some elements of differentiation as well as a lot of the elements of cost leadership. So if you're very comfortable with the basic strategies, and then understanding how they're likely to be pressured in terms of customer power or buyer power and supplier power, what kind of margins they operate with, and how the dynamics of all that put together, then you're in good shape for the exam questions out of chapter 4. I'm going to change slides and I'll get back to you about chapter 5. Moving into chapter 5, there are only 5 questions out of chapter 5. And so if you pay particular attention to me, I think you'll be in good shape. Remember, it starts with a competitor analysis, and this is figuring out who really is my competitor. And typically people are your competitor if they're either using the same resources you are, but frankly, that's pretty uncommon that that's a huge driver in this. It's typically that they're targeting the same customers that you are. Note that if somebody's targeting very different customers than you are, even though you're in the same industry, you may not perceive them, and they really may not be a competitor. We talked about the drivers of competitive behavior. How aware are they? How motivated are they? And what ability do they have? And then I want you to pay particular attention to what's likely to happen in this block. So, likelihood of attack. Well, some of the things to keep in mind is if you have a lot of what's called multi-market contact with somebody, you're probably less likely to attack them, but you're also more likely to respond if you are attacked, and that gets into the idea of market dependence. Remember, too, in terms of competitive actions, that strategic actions and tactical actions are sometimes dealt with differently. And so that gets us into the question of what is tactical versus strategic. Understanding that is going to help you with one question. And then these competitive tendencies are going to be important to understand as well. So if you're very familiar with the words on this slide, I think you'll be able to get several questions. Also, make sure you understand what it is to be a first mover, a second mover, and a late mover. And in general, when does it pay off to do those very strategies? Incidentally, there is one reference to the speed of the market in one of the questions on the exam, but it's not important that you know that. So I'm giving you a little bit of help there with that particular question. The one where it references the speed of the market isn't important, so don't need to worry about that sort of stuff. And if you're familiar with those things that I talked about, particularly this chart, and you can talk your way through this chart, know the difference between strategic and tactical, and you're aware of competitive tendencies, then you'll be in excellent shape for the questions off of Chapter 5.